Today, is employment on the turn? Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and problem news with a distinctively Australian flavour. One of the leading indicators about the direction of the economy ahead is the unemployment rate. Of course, it's been dropping over the last year or so, and this is one of the measures that's been celebrated by the RBA and the government. Low unemployment, of course, is a good thing, but is it now on the turn? And if it is that a signal of recessionary forces beginning to assert themselves ahead? Well, the ABS released their latest data on the labour market today, and it was not quite what was expected by the markets. In fact, the seasonally adjusted unemployment rate rose to 3.5% in August 2022, according to the ABS. The key reason for the rise in the unemployment rate was the 0.2% lift in the labour force participation rate to 66.6%. The participation rate sits just below the record high of 66.8% back in June. The ABS said, with employment increasing by 33,000 people and unemployment by 14,000, the unemployment rate rose 0.1 percentage points to 3.5% in August, returning to the same rate as in June. The unemployment rate rose to 3.5% for men, up 0.1 percentage points, and remained steady for women at 3.4 percentage points in rounded terms. The participation rate also rose to 66.6%, consistent with the increase in employment and unemployment. The participation rate is now 0.2 percentage points below the record high in June and 0.7 percentage points higher than before the pandemic. The participation rate rose for men and women, both up 0.2 percentage points. Seasonally adjusted employment increased by 33,000 people, or 0.2% in August. And with the rise in employment, the employment to population ratio increased 0.1 percentage points to 64.3%. Seasonally adjusted hours worked rose by 0.8% in August. That fully reversed last month's drop in the hours worked, when it was down 0.8% in July. And they said, during the pandemic, we have seen changing patterns in employment and hours worked in the months with and after school holidays. The August rise in employment and hours occurred after the winter school holidays and flooding events in New South Wales, where we saw more people than usual working fewer hours in July. COVID-19 and other illness-related work absences continued to be reflected in hours worked in August. The number of people working reduced hours due to being sick remained elevated in August at around 760,000 people. This is around double the number we typically see at the end of winter, the ABS said. The underemployment rate decreased by 0.1 percentage points to 5.9%, and the underutilisation rate, which combines the unemployment and underemployment rates, remains at 9.4%. Now, across the states, the unemployment rate varied from a low of 2.7% in the ACT and 3.1% in Western Australia to highs of 7.3% in Tasmania and 6.5% in South Australia. And the participation rate was lowest in Tasmania at 61.3% and 63.1% in South Australia, up to 73.6% in the NT and 70.9% in the ACT. Now, one factor to bear in mind here is the methodology that the ABS uses. The labour force survey sample is run and can be thought of comprising 8 sub-samples or rotation groups, with each sub-sample remaining in the survey for 8 months and one group rotating out each month and being replaced by a new group rotating in. As 7/8 of the sample are common from one month to the next, changes in the estimates reflect real changes in the labour market, they say, rather than changes in the sample. The replacement sample is generally selected from the same geographic areas as those rotating out. But while the rotation groups are designed to be representative of the population, the outgoing and incoming rotation groups will almost always have somewhat different characteristics as they reflect different households and people. Now, the ABS designs the survey to include weightings and estimation processes to ensure that these differences are generally relatively minor and so don't affect the representativeness of the survey and its estimates. And the ABS says that monthly estimates are designed to be representative regardless of the relative contribution of the components in the sample. That said, it is worth noting that the new sample has higher unemployment and lower participation than the old, possibly enough to move the dial. Hard to say, really. Anyway, to sum up, the 33,000 rise in employment was on par with the market estimate, which was at 37,500. And as the ABS noted, the August rise in employment and hours occurred after the winter school holidays and flooding events in New South Wales, which saw more people in July working fewer hours than usual. This did reverse in August for COVID-19, but other illnesses causing worker absences continue to be reflected in the August labour force survey. The ABS noted that the number of people working reduced hours due to being sick increased 11,000 to 761,000 in August, which is around double the number typically seen at the end of winter. Now, of course, the ABS did not provide the data in the number that worked 0 hours due to illness in August, but it's likely to have been around 300,000, as reported in July, if not a little higher. And by the way, the three industries with the highest number of employed people in the June quarter were healthcare and social assistance, retail, trade and professional, and scientific and technical services. On the other hand, the three industries with the highest number of hours actually worked in the June quarter were healthcare and social assistance, construction, and professional, scientific and technical services. One other observation worth noting, which was released by the ABS on the previous day, was a significant rise in the number of multiple job holders across the country. They said the number of multiple job holders reached a record high of 900,000 people in the June quarter. That's an increase of 4.3%, according to those figures from the ABS. And they said around 900,000 people worked multiple jobs in the June quarter, 6.5% of all employed people actually. That's the highest rate since the quarter series commenced back in 1994 and about 0.5 percentage points above its pre-pandemic level. Along with a 4.3% increase in the number of multiple job holders, the number of jobs worked as secondary jobs also increased by 5.5% and passed 1 million for the first time. This highlights that some people work more than 2 jobs at the same time. The number of filled jobs also reached a record high of just under 15 million. That's an increase of 2.2% in the June quarter. And there was also a 14.3% increase in vacant jobs. The high number of both filled jobs and vacant jobs reflects the continued strong demand for workers across the economy, coupled with widespread labour shortages, the ABS said. Hours worked increased by 2.9% for the June quarter, following the fall in the March quarter associated with the initial impacts of the Omicron variant and floods in eastern Australia. The increase in secondary jobs and hours worked since early in the pandemic has coincided with the large fall in the number of part-time and full-time workers who would like to work more hours, with underemployment now at historic lows, the ABS said. Multiple job holdings rose in all industries in the June quarter, and the largest increase in the number of multiple job holders was in arts and recreation services at 16.3% more people, and information, media and telecommunications up 11.8%. Arts and recreation services also had the highest multiple job holding rate, increasing by 0.4 percentage points to 8.9% in the June quarter. The rate was lowest in electricity, gas, water and waste services at 3.5%. Now, this multiple jobs question is consistent with my surveys, where households under financial stress are actively seeking additional employment to meet the rising costs of everyday expenditure, as well as mortgage repayments and rents, which are rising fast. This also extends to working evenings and weekends to try to generate additional income, even if industry sectors where pay rates are low are being tapped into. And the ABS also observed that job vacancies increased by 14.3% to 480,000 vacant jobs to reach a record high. That was more than double the number of vacant jobs before the start of the pandemic. Labour shortages reflected the continued demand for workers across Australia, with vacant jobs in the June quarter accounting for 3.1% of all jobs. Over the decade before the pandemic, vacant jobs generally accounted for about 1.4% of all jobs, they said. And filled jobs increased in 16 of the 19 industries, with the arts and recreation services industries seeing the largest increase, up 10.3%. The largest decline was in manufacturing, which fell 1.6%. So you can see some of those broader economic drivers bleeding through into these numbers. First, the further closure of the manufacturing sector in Australia. That's a continuing process, unfortunately, which at the moment doesn't seem to be reversing at all. And the rise in multiple jobs, because more people are chasing more income to try and cover all their costs. But as for whether, in fact, the employment rate is now on the turn up, well, I think it's too soon to say. There are too many other factors that could influence it, and it's a very small move nevertheless. So we'll keep an eye on it next month, and if it continues to trend up, then we might start to conclude that, in fact, we have reached the bottom of the unemployment cycle and that the market is beginning to tighten. On the other hand, all of those job vacancies suggest that if people want to work, they can get work, even if they're paid not much at all. Now, if you're buying your home in Sydney's contentious market, you don't need to stand alone. This is the time you need to have Edwin Almeida from Ribbon Property Consultants standing alongside you. Buying a property is both challenging and adversarial. The vendor has a professional on their side. Emotions run high, price discovery and price transparency are hard to find, and then there's the wasted time and financial investments that you make. Edwin understands your needs, so why not engage a licensed professional to stand alongside you? With RPC, you know you have experience, knowledge, and master negotiators looking after your best interests. So shoot Ribbon an email at info@ribbonproperty.com.au, and if you use the promo code DFAWTW/Martin, you can get a 10% discount offer. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.